More and more Republicans, they're looking for President Trump to put his money where his mouth is when it comes to the wiretapping allegations. Senator Lindsey Graham, former JAG, by the way, he is leading a group that wants the Justice Department to provide information about the president's claim that Barack Obama had him wiretapped. FBI Director James Comey has already reportedly asked Justice to publicly refute the president's claims. But so far, not a peep out of Justice. And former Director of the National Security, James Clapper, he had the following to say.
The national security apparatus that I oversaw as DNI, there was no such wiretap activity mounted against the president-elect at the time, or as a candidate, or against his campaign.
Now that leaves us with Congress scheduling its first hearing on the matters for this March 20th. Growing calls here for a special prosecutor also take over in the Russia probe that now will be conflated by this as well. Take a look at where the public stands on this. Brand new poll came out today. They support the idea. Nearly 2 in 1, thanks guys, shows that they want a special prosecutor. But perhaps the most important thing to remember is this. A president can't simply just say, wiretap the guy. And presidents, they don't even do the ordering. Surveillance of an American citizen needs approval from a federal judge, and the FBI or the Justice Department are the ones that order them. I want to bring in our legal panel right now. Jim Kasuris, he's a criminal defense attorney in Manhattan. He sits on the board of directors of the New York City Criminal Bar Association, frequently lecturing at New York Law School and the bar associations in Queens and New York City. Doug Von Oys, founding partner of Carson Von Oys, focusing on corporate misconduct, and he was selected by the Legal 500 as one of the most influential trial attorneys in the country. Mayo Bartlett, an attorney at the law offices of Mayo Bartlett PLC and a former chief of the Bias Crimes Unit at the Westchester County's DA's office, and Mark Furnish, adjunct professor at the Elizabeth Hobbs School of Law at Pace University, and he's also argued before the U.S. Supreme Court. And Mark, I'll start with you, which is, listen, we'll get to the legal, but from the optics of what he said, then the lack of availability that the president has made for himself and supporters have seemingly tried to nuance it here. An early AM tweet that seems to have no merit, at least to this point, from anyone. It's more than just maybe just a rash statement here. He's all but begged for a whole lot of trouble. Explain just how hard it is to get a wiretap on somebody. I mentioned before the president can't do it, but there's paper trails to this, right?
Well, it isn't that hard to get a wiretap. I mean, I wouldn't focus so much on who issues it. Obviously, in this case, it would be the FISA court, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. FISA is an acronym for Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Obviously, Obama himself can't issue the order, but his Justice Department has to apply for the order, and it's an ex parte showing, meaning it's not adversarial. You just make sworn allegations of fact that you need it for a national security investigation. And in the FISA court, unlike in a regular Article 3 court, the executive branch does have to sign off on the application. So it's sort of a matter of semantics, whether he ordered it or whether he sought it.
But my only part, Mark, my only point, on this is you have the FBI director who clearly said, it didn't happen, I didn't ask for it. You have the former DNI who was there at the time who said, I didn't do it, didn't happen with me. And when they gave me the wiggle room, he goes, no, I'm categorically denying it. You have nobody on House or Senate Intelligence Committees that even heard a rumor of it, let alone a peep of it. Nobody seems to know where this is coming from.
Well, no, there's been rumors that this Russian stuff didn't come out of nowhere, and there's been reporting and whispers for the past year that he's been, or members of his campaign have been closely allied with the Russians. We know that Manafort and other associates and advisors.
But he didn't hint at. He said President Obama committed a felony by wiretapping him.
Well, I don't know that he said he committed a felony. He said he's a bad or sick guy. But I'm telling you, it's not implausible that there was some sort of electronic surveillance operation set up through the FISA Act that caught Trump or members of his campaign.
But it's possible, and people have said possibly, that they were looking at other people, and there was financial transactions, and then they were caught up in it, which would be worse for Donald Trump, by the way.
No.
But yes, it would. If it turns out that his associates were having financial dealings with the Russians, even though we've already had 6 now that have said they didn't, and then they've had to revise their stories acknowledging they did, that's different. But to suggest, he stated that President Obama wiretapped him.
There's little doubt in my mind that there was some surveillance going on of the Trump Tower computers and possibly the phones. Do I think Trump was the target of them? No. But if he was caught speaking on the phone with somebody who was a target, they're allowed to catch that. And look, he doesn't speak in a 140-character treat with the precision of a lawyer. I have no doubt that he embellished it and overstated it.
He's the president. He's the commander-in-chief.
Listen,
it does matter.
The New York Times has reported that the Obama Justice Department, in his waning days, ceded the executive branch.
The Times wrote the story. That's different than wiretapping, Mark. Nobody is saying the two are the same.
I am saying that there are unsubstantiated rumors going out on both sides, and he used this successfully to change the narrative.
Mayor, to me, what jumped out is the unadulterated denials from folks, from the former president, as I said, from the FBI director, from the director of national intelligence here. They've gone, and they wouldn't go this far. I know this much. And they're begging for an investigation. No Republican is standing with the president on Capitol Hill on this, et cetera. Sean Spicer, I almost feel bad for the guy. Like, he needs combat pay for the questions he's getting on this. Either somebody's going to have to admit, we lied, we made a mistake here, or you know, whatever credibility is left is going to be gone.
Absolutely. And again, you know, we looked at what does it take in order to get a warrant. And it all goes back to Snowden, really, when you start to look at the fact that Clapper, who we just saw a little while ago, stated...
Take seriously anything he says, lied to Congress.
And he's not alone, though, there. No. But he stated before that clearly that we were not surveilling the American people, and then all of a sudden WikiLeaks showed that we were, and then he came back before Congress and said that he had testified in the least untruthful manner possible. Well, anybody on this table, we would all be in jail right now, or on our path there. But beyond that, we did talk about what's the oversight.
You look at just one basic question, though. If I'm Donald Trump and I decide to make this allegation at 3 in the morning because nobody took my phone away from me,
6:30,
okay?
6:30.
Sorry, Mark.
He was probably up at 3 formulating
one thing that he's afforded by law is, here's my evidence. He can declassify anything he wants. He's the president of the United States. He could have gone out in his bathrobe in Mar-a-Lago and said, I'm declassifying the phone. Here it is. This is where I've got it. I'm sorry. The guy who will say anything at any time, anywhere, has gone completely radio silent on this. Well, Republicans, as well as Democrats, have said, show us the evidence or the proof. Not a Jimmy.
We don't know that there's not a pending case either. We don't know that there's not something out there, that there's a pending investigation that they're not going to talk about right now. So he's, well, so we don't know. As Preet Bharara always says, stay tuned, right?
Right, but there shouldn't be categorical denials. There should be, with something we can't discuss, there are pending investigations.
But they aren't categorical denials. You have to parse the words of these statements. He just said, Obama, first of all, didn't say anything. He said something through a spokesperson. Comey hasn't said anything. He's just reported to a pressure.
Comey's been asked, and he has not denied the cover story of the Times that says, you go into the Department of Justice and say, you guys walk this back.
Yes.
And Justice
that has been reported, and they're not saying anything. Look,
and Clapper went public, and you can say whatever you want with him, but DNI said categorically, and he could have mitigated it. It never happened, and he would have seen it. Now, one last thing.
He phrased it very carefully.
The way this has gone, he seems to almost be begging to have an independent prosecutor now come on, because politically this is becoming untenable to say, you know, we'll go in the normal corners here. Republicans will handle the investigations. Yeah, there'll be Democrats in the committee. The more and more that you put logs on the fire, you're almost saying somebody else has to come in from the outside, at least to the person who's the non-attorney at the table.
It would appear that way. You know, Rich, you got to be very careful when you talk about this, because Donald Trump has had a sort of a track record of saying a crazy thing, and then later on something actually pops up.
It's still crazy.
Yeah, maybe crazy at the time. But
I just went through a litany of things for what he said was going to happen, and not one of them has.
And by the way, if you look at what he tweeted, it was obviously probably 100% wrong. You're never going to get somebody saying Barack Obama told me to wiretap him. But
that doesn't mean there was no wiretap.
But you accused a former. This is my world here.
But
it's not just words. What I was saying off the top. At the end, you are questioning the integrity of a president.
People are questioning Trump's integrity and sanity every single day of the week.
And due respect, has he earned it?
Well, but Rich,
yes, he won the election.
Listen,
he won the election as a political
he's been doing this since the campaign started, and there are no ramifications and there's no accountability. So, you know, he's doing it again. And if it turns out that the wiretap wasn't directed at him, but he was overheard, he's going to say I was right.
Except here's what we've heard, okay? We've seen already an attorney general has had to recuse himself. He's already had people that have had to step away from the campaign and now even his cabinet. You look at his numbers right now and the belief the public has in his integrity as a president. You have ongoing investigations, and I'm telling you, Republicans livid. This is a separate issue we'll talk about over the health care reform, at least the replacement portion of it. He becomes more and more toxic and less preferable to stand by on these things. That filters into who should be the one doing the investigating.
Well, I agree with that. At this point, if I were him, because this threatens, it's all of it is, and I've said it many times, all of it is a complete sideshow. I would appoint Pat Fitzgerald to conduct an independent investigation, and I would appoint as a counterbalance Ted Wells, one Democrat, one Republican, let them bang their heads together and get to the truth. Get rid of it. And let him do the work of governing, but he's not going to do it.
I think, by the way, that's a great idea. I respect both of those guys.
Yes.
Forget about their politics.
Yes.
I think both of them have impeccable credibility,
He should do
overdue
that, but
as
he
well.
won't do it because he's already upset that Sessions stepped away.
Right.
So he should do that and get on with the business of governing, because I think you underestimate the groundswell of popular support he still has.
I don't debate, Mark, that there is a core that literally, like he said, he could walk into Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, his words, by the way, and they'd still support him. I believe that that's true. Yes. But the problem is that portion is not a plurality in this country, and that portion and that base is not growing. In fact, it's starting to shrink.
Look at the numbers for the independents.
No, I did. And by the way, historically, no president has had this low level of approval rating, and more importantly, I haven't seen numbers that high asking for an independent prosecutor. All right, coming up next. Speaking of Trump University, thought that case was closed? Well, it could reopen. One victim doesn't want to take the settlement, so she could try to take the President of the United States to court. This could have major implications.